everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me. And this is a big show. I'm excited. I'm always excited to speak to him. I am going to be speaking with economist Richard Wolff in just a second. Please make sure to hit subscribe, hit thumbs up, hit share. If you hit follow at Rumble, please hit the bell icon next to it so that you get alerted to my videos. And if you're on my newsletter, free newsletter, which you can sign up for at leecamp.com, you may get little alerts at the top of the newsletter from Google that say, this is a dangerous email. It's not dangerous. It's fine. It's totally fine. They just want you to think it's dangerous. So anyway, thank you everyone for being here. After I speak with Richard Wolff for the first half of the show, I will then be hitting a bunch of other subjects as well. Anyway, let's, why waste the time? Please welcome my favorite economist and yours, Richard Wolff.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Yes, I'm excited to have you back on. How are you?
Pretty well. And yourself?
Oh, hanging in there as we live in these dystopian times.
Yes, we do.
I wanted to start off with a new report that just came out saying, this is reported from CBS News, but they're not the ones that created it, but report saying that 99% of the nation, an average American's income, which is $71,000 a year, would not be able to afford a home. A person making $71,000 a year cannot afford a home in 99% of this fine country. What does that say to you about the way our economy is working right now? And how does it square or interact with the fact that Joe Biden and so many others are bragging about how this is the lowest, historically low unemployment right now?
Okay, well, you don't need me to explain what the numbers mean, really, right? Everybody can understand. One of the most basic things you ask of any economy is to provide food, clothing, and shelter to sustain the people that live there. And what that statistic just did was tell us that the capitalist economic system we live in gets a big fat F when it comes to providing shelter. It's not doing it if 99% of the people cannot afford the rent or the mortgage or whatever it is they need to have adequate shelter, to have a home. It's a pathetic reality. Now, what does it say about Mr. Biden? Mr. Biden, like most politicians, has a number one priority, and that is to get reelected so he can do more of whatever it is he's done before. And that's not peculiar to Biden or the Democrats or anybody else. So they have to now try to look good when you have an economy that can't even provide decent housing for people at a price that they can afford. And let's remember, what that statistic, the 99% can't afford it, means that either the amount of income people earn in this country or the price of homes is out of whack because the money you earn isn't enough to get the house. And the only solutions are either to pay people more or bring down the price of housing. And Mr. Biden has never done either of those things, and there's no reason to expect him to do it. That's not the way this system works. So yeah, he points to whatever statistic his desperate advisors can come up with that makes the economy look good. And they have one these days. Let's give them that. Unemployment is lower than it usually is in this country. There are still, let me get it clear to people, there are still between 10 and 15 million Americans unable to get the work they need and want right now. So we're not at full employment or even close. But sadly, we're doing better than we usually do, which is even worse than those numbers I just gave you. So he can point to that and say, gee, it's low unemployment. It is. But what good is that to people if the only reason we have more people working is that we force down the real wage that people earn? And remember, the real wage is not the money you get in your wallet. It's what you can afford to buy with the money that you get in your paycheck. And if prices are going up, which they have been doing, then the real value of the money in that pay envelope is shrinking. And that's what's going on. So if you're honest, you look at a bunch of statistics and you make a judgment about the economy based on them. If you did that rather than cherry pick your statistics, then you wouldn't be able to boast about the economy. Biden couldn't do what he's doing. Instead, he's hoping that by harping on the unemployment or whatever good statistic he can find, you won't think about all the others. Here's the metaphor to think about. If you went to a doctor and you said, I've really been feeling bad, I really don't feel well, and it's weighing on my family and on me. And he said, here, take this thermometer. Let's check your temperature. And he does. And he says, 98.6, you're normal. Go home. Hopefully, you'd realize you're going to the wrong doctor, because any medical specialist, any medical profession, they have a whole array of blood tests and urine tests and 20,000 other tests, because to assess health, you need to understand the whole picture, not cherry pick a thermometer or this particular test. It's childishly hustling, and nobody should be fooled.
All great points. And what does it say about the way this economic system works that we have, last I checked, something like 16 million, 17 million empty homes around the entire United States, as so many people can't afford a home, and so many of them are bought up by large investors and the very rich. We're told in this system that capitalism is a great system for getting materials and resources to the people that need them, but that seems to be the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. People will look back on this period of time in American history a little bit like they do look back at the Great Depression. In today, here in the United States, we have, depending on how you count, let's be conservative, 1 million or more than 1 million homeless people. We have at least 10 to 20 million Americans who are living with extended families, people who are young adults but can't leave their home, their parents' home, because there's no way that they can afford it. Okay, so we're now talking millions and millions of people who either have no home or don't have enough space. And what are they doing? Imagine them this way. Imagine lining them all on one side of Broadway in New York City and putting across on the other side all the homes right now in America, the apartments and the homes sitting empty. Here's the critique of capitalism. With millions who have no adequate homes and millions of adequate homes, this system can't put them together. This system cannot figure a way out just to use the home capacity we already have to solve the inadequate home problem we also have. That's right. It's a statement of the failure of a system, because the people who own the homes, and you're right, we have had a stunning change in home ownership. It has gone from the individual occupier of the home who owns that home to homes as an investment. Super wealthy people give their money to a hedge fund or equity funds. There are various names for them, but they all do the same thing. They buy up the houses that people who no longer can make the mortgage have to sell at a low price. They snap them up and then they rent them out as an investment. And here's the ugliest part of it. They often go to the people who are in danger of losing their home because they can't make the mortgage. And they say to them, here's what we'll do. You sell us the house. We'll take care of the mortgage. You can stay there so you don't have all the disruption to your life of losing your home. Your teenage kids don't have to go through leaving the high school they know and going to the high school where there'll be new kids with all that goes with that. We'll save you from all that. Just sell us your house at a nice low price, and you can become the tenant, our tenant, in your own former house. Millions of Americans are in that situation as I speak to you now. This is not a success. this is a failure, especially in a country like ours, where so many people have attached real meaning to becoming the owner of your own home. And you're taking that away, and you're making money off the process, and you're doing it by taking advantage of a system that doesn't pay people enough to afford a home. I mean, the story, if you're honest about it, should tell you more than any politician's mumbling about this or that cherry-picked statistic.
Yeah, it's a failed system. Moving on to what we've seen wall-to-wall coverage of on our mainstream media the past couple of weeks. This government shutdown that now seems it's going to be put off for maybe a couple of months, and we're going to see all the back and forth again in just a few weeks. It's been postponed, but I've often said when now it seems to be once a year. It used to be once every 2 years or something. That the government shutdown, the debt ceiling fights are just political theater. And I've often said that, but you'll probably do a more intricate job of explaining why is this political theater.
Well, I have to admit something to you, Lee. It is political theater. I've used the phrase political theater, and I am remiss because I should have given you credit. It is probably seriously, it is probably where I got the idea, because it captures it. It's a theater, it's prepared, it has scripts, it has appropriate graphics mixed in with the scripts to make them a bit more lively about an otherwise terribly boring subject. We have many, many times in the recent past had this theater. By now, it's boring to most people because they remember the last time. And in case it isn't, the last time is too far behind, see the nice service they've done for us. Mid of November coming up, we'll have it all over again. So let's unpack it for a moment. Why is it theater? Because it gives Republicans and Democrats a chance, in the full glare of mass media in this country, a chance to pander to their political base. The Republicans can put on a show about how deeply concerned they are about the deficit. When you ask them a question, which I've done, what is the size of the deficit? It's because, of course, they don't really give a flying you-know-what. This is a game. See, we're protecting you and your economic future and your children by limiting the amount of money that the government can borrow by telling them we're going to slash spending on everything that the government does. It looks good if you have that mentality. It shows the Republicans are protecting the wallets of people who are worried about where their wealth is going to go. And the Democrats, they put on their show. We will not let the nasty Republicans take away your Social Security, your college loan, your subsidy for daycare, your medical supports, and all the other things that people in this country need, precisely because the private capitalist sector doesn't provide those services to you in the way that you need them. So the Democrats are protecting the people who need government spending, and the Republicans are protecting the people who don't want to contribute to the government. Wonderful show. You got the mass media who either have nothing better to do or are part of this game, giving you a chance for one to put on your show and denounce the other one. It's over and over. They could never afford it, these parties, rich as they are. This is invaluable publicity. So, of course, they're going to run the show because it's either saving or making a lot of money for them. That's their game. And then what do they do in the end? Every time it's the same thing. They reach a compromise. They don't borrow quite as much as they used to, but they don't cut the government programs anywhere near as much as the Republicans. Then the Republicans go back to their base, talk about what they achieved, and leave out what they had to give up. The Democrats do the same thing in reverse. And we get the compromise that always ends this stupid theater, which is why most people no longer care much about it. And it has to stretch for a longer number of days to get the eyes on that they're paying for by putting on all of this theater. But there is one problem here that should not be forgotten. We are displaying to the rest of the world a nation so divided that it has to go through this crap. You don't see this in other countries, nothing like it. So the rest of the world looks at the United States and begins to wonder whether the sheer accumulation of these pieces of theater suggests underlying divisions, breakdowns, inability to function, and seeing it come so close to the deficit nonsense of before, the level of vitriol in the speeches about one another that you hear. And that's very, very dangerous. And the reason is simple, although it's hard for Americans. The time of the American empire is over. We had a good run, 100 years. We replaced the British Empire and had a better empire in many ways. But like every single empire in the history of the human race, it's born, it evolves over time, and then it dies. Ours was born in the Second World War and the aftermath, when we were the only one left standing. And we've had a run of 75 years, give or take. And we'll have a few more, but it's over. And the dying is underway. And putting on this kind of theater may play for domestic politics, but it is nailing another nail into the dying of the empire. Foreigners with money are pulling it out of the United States. It's too risky to have dollars. That's why you hear about de-dollarization in the world. Well, one of the reasons is wealthy people are wondering, especially when you get politics becoming crazy, a la, well, you know who the crazy ones are. You don't need me to tell you. But the more they're there, the louder they are, the more power they seem to have, the more you say, I'm not leaving my wealth in America. These crazy people, who knows what they will do? So if I own land in Nevada, I'm going to sell it. If I have a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, I'm going to sell it. If I used to keep a quarter of my wealth in banks in New York, I'm not going to do it anymore. And that begins to shrink the economy. For those who don't know, let me just summarize in one statistic. The world is now economically divided into two major blocks. One of them is called the G7. The United States, France, Germany, Britain, Italy, Canada, and Japan, the G7. That used to be the wealth center, the capitalist West, even though Japan is in the East. Okay, now there's a second one. Didn't have that one before. It's called the BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and they just added 6 more countries, and 20 are applying to get in. The year 2020 was the last time the total output of goods and services, the GDP, stands for gross domestic product, was equal in the two of them. Equal amount of output. Now, 3 years later, the trend line continues. The G7 now account for about 29% of the total output of goods and services on this planet every year. But the BRICS, they account for 33% more. And the gap is growing wider as I speak to you. The dominant economic bloc in the world is China and its allies, no longer the United States and its. Therefore, this political theater is a self-delusional luxury this country cannot afford.
Yeah, and only a collapsing empire would vomit up leaders like Joe Biden and Donald Trump. But I often say that we could deal with a fading or waning empire like adults, like logical adults, and work cooperatively with other nations and decrease our massive military expenditure and the 800, 900 bases around the world. Or we could deal with it like children, which is what we seem to be doing, seem to be heavily going down that path. of
Yep,
just
yep. You know, and
flailing.
it's ironic because look at the history of the United States, which screams the opposite lesson. You know, we as a nation, we were a colony of Great Britain. We were a small corner of the British Empire. And then we wanted as a nation to go in our own direction, and the British didn't like that. They wanted to make money off of this place, and they taxed our tea, and so the guys in Boston threw the tea into the harbor, ha ha ha, and we celebrate the Tea Party, right? And the British went to war. You're not going to break away. You're not going to have your own tea. We'll tell you what you pay for the tea. And they lost the war. They couldn't get over it. They lost the war. So in 1812, they tried again.
Yeah.
And we had another war. After two wars, both of which the British Empire global lost to this little corner of the empire, the United States, the British learned a lesson. Don't do that. You're going to lose. And they didn't for the next century and a half. Since then, Britain and the United States have not gone to war. The British Empire turned into zero. It's gone. The American Empire rose and replaced it, but they did it without war after having two of them show them that this was not the way to go. Will the United States learn the lesson of its own history, realize that China and its allies are what the United States was 100 years ago? And they're going to have to decide, are you really going to try to stop the passage of history, to reverse all that the Chinese have accomplished with their allies? You think you're going to do that by having a war around Taiwan? Or, if we're going to be honest, a war in Ukraine? It's not going to work. You are not the empire that lasts forever. None ever has. And the idea that you will tells us more about what's wrong with your thinking than it tells us about anything else.
Yeah, to shift to domestically for a moment, you're a big proponent of having democracy in the workplace. And most people don't really think about the fact that in our workplace in the United States, I mean, I guess in most countries, it's a corporation or a company is a totalitarian structure. The workers generally, in most examples, have little to zero say. And so in this time of transition in the United States, in this time of workers fighting back, there's been a wave of strikes like we haven't seen in years. Have we seen any movement of democracy in the workplace? Where does that stand?
Yes, I think we have. First of all, let me pick up on one theme you just put forward, and you're quite right. Workers are demanding more say on the job. That's a large part about what the Teamsters demanded in their strike, in their movement towards a strike against United Parcel Service. That's a large part of what motivates auto workers in America as they struggle with GM, Ford, and Stellantis. It's the amazing spectacle of ununionized workers in Starbucks, in Trader Joe, in Amazon, trying to do what? To form a community run democratically by having the majority, which is always the workers, have something like a say in what's going on. I mean, if we do believe in democracy the way we forever claim we do, then the issue isn't let's bring it to the workplace. The issue is, how in the world have we had a country for 200 plus years proclaiming a commitment to democracy and never bringing it into the workplace? We elect the people who govern us in the community where we live, but we have no say over the people who govern us 5 out of 7 days in the places where we work. That is extraordinary. How did those people get to it? And that's right. We didn't get rid of kings when we overthrew monarchies 3 centuries ago. The kings outsmarted us. They changed their names and called themselves instead CEOs, and they climbed inside the enterprise to do what they couldn't do anymore in the larger community. So I don't want to be understood as an advocate for making democracy happen. I'm an enemy of those who blocked it from the workplace and should never have been allowed to do that. having said that, rather than tell you this or that, let me tell you a story personally. Some years ago, I was invited, and I went to Silicon Valley, that part of California just north of San Jose and south of San Francisco, which was then and still is the center for our super high-tech industries, or at least one center of those industries. And I gave talks to engineers who came in and brought me there, paid my way, put me up in a nice hotel, etc. And I said to them, you know, I'm going to frighten you, but first I'm going to tell you something you're proud of. And many of them, I said, many of you left a job paying you $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, working for IBM or Intel or Cisco or, you know, any of those giants of the industry. You walked away from that job and you took your laptop in your hand, and together with a bunch of other younger people like yourself, you set up another business in the garage somebody had where you could all sit with your computers. But you insisted when you did that on the following. You could bring a Frisbee with you every day if you felt like it. You never had to wear a tie and a jacket if you're a male, or, you know, appropriate office attire for the women. You come in shorts, come with a t-shirt. If you have a toddler you need to keep an eye on, bring them. And you know, it's fine. And here we go now. We're all equal in this garage. No bosses to tell any of us what to do. We work things out like a community that respects one another. And that's how we're going to run. Monday to Thursday, we come in here and we develop the kind of software programs we're in business to do. On Friday, we come in and we don't do work with our computers. We sit and we have meetings. And there we decide, eventually, if we need it, one person, one vote, what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits our collective effort generates. I said, you're proud, those of you who did that. Yes. And some of them raised their hands and said, you know, that's how my company got big. We figured out that having left, we were able to do things much better than what we had been able to do when we were another overdressed cubicle occupier next to the next one, right? Turns out we're more excited about our work. We bring more energy to it. We look forward to our job. You know something? They said to me, we are more creative in this job than we ever were in the other. And let us tell you, and then I learned from them, many of the big inventions in the high-tech industry that are credited to capitalism shouldn't be. They weren't developed in a big corporation the way capitalism worked. You know where they were developed? In the garages with 2, 6, 19 equal, non-hierarchical, non-employer employee. We didn't have any of that. We were all employers and employees of ourselves. And we were much more creative. We were much more cooperative. We helped each other because the forward movement of any one of us was the forward movement of the whole community. We learned the lesson of a democratic workplace. And many of the inventions that people are so proud of were not the inventions of capitalism, but were the inventions of working people who walked away from their capitalist job to create a democratic community of working people. So when I advocate that, I tell that story because there's no reason to think that that's limited to high tech or anything else. You can do it in any field, manufacturing, farming, service production. This is a new way of living and working. And don't think it doesn't matter. Most of us spend an inordinate amount of our time, our energy, our brain power, our muscles at work. 8 hours a day, 5 days of the week. That's most of your life as an adult. If democracy is worth anything, it's where you spend all that time and where you bring all that effort and all that creativity. You ought to demand the respect that democracy gives one another rather than accepting a hierarchy of bureaucratic order givers telling you how, where, when, and what to do. And I think Americans are right now showing, whether it's a forklift driver in an Amazon warehouse or anybody else, they're demanding not just better pay, that's part of it, but a different status, a level of respect, a sense of themselves as a member of an equal community. It's going to be very hard to put that genie back in the bottle now that it's out.
Well said. And, I like how you started off with in the garage that they had to bring a Frisbee and wear shorts. And then you have Google and Apple and everyone trying to get those workers back into the totalitarian structures. So they said, listen, we'll let you bring a Frisbee and wear shorts.
Yes, they're desperate because people discovered during the pandemic, they got a lesson and a reminder of what it's like to go to that workplace, what it's like to dress up like that and be like that and work under those pressures. They don't want to go back. That's what we're learning. And it's clear. It's sad if they think the only choice is to go back or to stay at home, because there's an option, which Americans have been taught not to think about, but which I advocate. Imagine a workplace so designed that you'd love to go there, that you look forward to going there, just as much as you look forward to getting back to your home once you can get out at 5 o'clock of that place you've been thinking about leaving all the previous hours. As I like to remind people, the bars in America long ago understood the point. That's why there's a big sign in the window that you can see as you leave your job and go back home. The big sign says happy hour, because they know what you feel about the hours before you get to that bar. It reminds me of the song Leonard Cohen, one of the great songs he wrote and sang, and it's called Everybody Knows. If you've never listened to that song, do it. But he was saying what I'm saying. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's just you need to break the habits and start imagining that not only do you know, but you can actually do something about it, which is what people all over the world are doing.
Yeah, you're born free, and then you end up in a system where you work 5 days a week to try and rent back 2 days of your life from corporate America.
Right.
Thank you so much, Professor, for taking the time to do this. I know how busy you are. Economic Update is on YouTube and everywhere else, and everybody obviously should follow your work. Thanks again.
My pleasure, Lee, and thank you for the work you do. I think we are at a time when we're being surprised. I know I am almost every day that what I didn't imagine I would live to see is unfolding in front of my eyes. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, folks, there it is. Richard Wolff. Pleasure to have him on here. And, he was talking about the ideas that are passed around and shared in the work that is done in these, and we're talking about the tech industry for the moment, but you'll notice that in all of these companies, internally, they deal with it very different than capitalism. Internally, they say, hey, you have an idea, then share it with people, work together. We're not going to, as we're all building, let's say the iPod or the iPhone or whatever, as we're all building that, we're not going to jot down whose idea was what, and you get ownership of each idea and you patent it against the other workers inside Apple. No, we're going to all come together and we're going to all work on creating this thing. And because that's the best way that we can create the best device and do it the fastest and everything. But outside of that, so internally, corporations understand this. But in the system as a whole, it's all about grabbing everything, locking it down, patenting every idea. Apple has sued people because the curvature on the side of the phone, I'm not making this up, this sounds like a joke. The curve on, your iPhone has like this soft curve on the, well, other phones or other businesses started having a similar like soft curve, like the dynamic curve of the side of the phone. And they said, we patented that shape of that curve with exactly the, and you're like, what the fuck have we, because they got to lock it all down and make sure no one could ever, Amazon went to court because they claim they had patented one click. Other companies aren't allowed to use one-click shopping. You have to have multi-clicks because one click is ours. And I think they won that one, by the way. I'm pretty sure Amazon won that lawsuit. And it's just pure insanity. But meanwhile, the truth is every idea we've ever had, every idea you've ever had or worked with in any business, anywhere, it's on mountains of other ideas that you have grown up with and taken in and processed through your brain ball and mushed it all together with other things. So in fact, there is no original idea. It is on the backs of all the millions of ideas, thousands of workers, whatever. It's all been shared and come together as something. But instead, we now have this system where corporations, in order to profit the most, try and lock down and patent everything. And then there's patent trolls, people that didn't even come up with something, but they claim they did. And then they try and go after everyone else. And it's a shit show of an economic system. All right, but anyway, that was Professor Wolff, and thank you for joining me for that. But we still have plenty of the hour left here to go, and I got a bunch of stories I'm bringing to you, including the fact that right now in Ukraine, this proxy war in Ukraine, we and Russia and Ukraine are fighting over inches. Fucking inches. Nothing is actually large, is actually changing. Anyway, I'm going to getting too deep into it, but that's coming up as well as other stories in just a few minutes. This is only going to continue at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's my locals page, rumble.com/Lee Camp, and leecamp.net will be the two places this continues. Rumble is free to watch and comment and everything. So I'm not hiding it from you. So I hope you'll join me there, but let me just remind you of this real quick. Coming up tomorrow, there will be no live stream tomorrow. Not Dangerous Ideas will not be our normal time, 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, because I will be doing this instead at a slightly different time, though. This will be at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you can watch online also for free. It is me, Cornel West, presidential candidate. Also presidential candidate Claudia de la Cruz. Also two-time vice presidential candidate Eugene Puryear. Also the co-founder and head of Code Pink, Medea Benjamin. All of that and me and a little guy named me we'll be performing live or speaking live in Washington, D.C. You're welcome to attend live, but also I assume many of you are watching from around the world right now, and you can watch this. All you have to do is RSVP. I don't know if they have a cutoff for the number of people that can RSVP. I have no idea on that. But all you have to do is RSVP. It's at codepink.org. I'll put the full link here in the chat. But yeah, so go to codepink.org if you want to sign up. That's 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific tomorrow, Tuesday, October 3rd. Anti-war speeches, rally, whatever you want to call it, about this proxy war. And it should be amazing. Cornel West, me, Claudia de la Cruz, Medea Benjamin, Eugene Puryear, all there, all speaking. And, I don't even know if they have other things planned as well on that bill, but that's as much as I know about it. But yeah, it's about the urgency of pursuing peace in Ukraine. Keynote speaker will be Professor Cornel West. And I hope you'll join us for that, because 7 p.m. you can watch it live on 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And because I need to, get to DC and everything, I will not be doing my live stream, my regular live stream tomorrow. But a great thing to replace it. Mark's asking why Garden Rock or Yard Rock was not invited. That's a good point. Yard Rock was not invited to speak, which is rather offensive. But I will say this, I may just bring Yard Rock along, and he may make an appearance, whether they like it or not. So, presidential candidate, literal rock from my yard, is also running for president, and that's at yardrock2024.com. And there's merch there. There's also some Redacted Tonight merch as well for those of you who miss Redacted Tonight. I know I miss Redacted Tonight. I didn't like when the U.S. government came and shut it down. But yeah, that's all at yardrock2024.com. Okay, let's get to this story about how, and this is, by the way, this is not some crazy conspiracy theory. This is a map printed by the New York Times of how little has changed this year in this insane lunatic war in Ukraine. This is New York Times, and that story and more will be at rumble.com/Lee Camp, as well as leecamp.net. And if you become a member at leecamp.net, you also get my book, my ebook, Dangerous Ideas. You get so much else. But yeah, rumble.com/Lee Camp for the free version. Head on over there. Just give me 1 second here.